Watkins with Cofield and Company on ESPN Las Vegas and ESPN Reno.
So last week we talked a lot about the latest with the Pac-12 lawsuit against the Mountain West Conference. It's, some pretty deep stuff, and that's why we want the legal expert in Justin Watkins. So I clipped part of the video, put out some of the sound as well. People reacted to it pretty strongly. And I think really pro UNLV people don't want to hear that the Pac-12 has a pretty good case here in this battle between the two. So that was you got the experience with the Burner Brigade, which is growing in size, which I like. UNLV football is winning, so there's a lot more interest on social media in UNLV football. One of the questions I got that I thought was interesting, because I've said repeatedly, I don't think it matters much. By 2031, I don't know if it matters if there's a Pac-12, a Mountain West Conference, and AAC. You're either going to be in one of the two biggest conferences or you're not. I think it's splintering to like a top 40 and then Division II. FBS is another 50 schools. And then after that, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm sure there's positioning. We'll get to that part. But I did have a question from one of our listeners who said, well, what would happen to the bottom 30 teams in FBS? They have voting rights. They're not going to want to be forced down to a third lower division. And I didn't answer it because I was just saving it for you to say it or disagree with me. Voting rights.
Yeah.
What are those?
I mean, that's my response. Voting rights in what? In an entity that everybody leaves? Like that's the question, right? That's ultimately what the Big Ten and SEC hold over all of their heads is, hey, all the A4 and I'll say potentially the Pac-12 when they reach their conference minimum might have a seat at that table if it's reinstated. They are to be considered. I think if this current structure is all they get, they likely will not get power status. If they get Memphis and Tulane, maybe, but that seems to not be happening. But so the other two, the Big 12 and the ACC, you say, well, you need their votes to make any changes to anything you want here. Yes, as long as the Big Ten and SEC are willing to play in the same pool, but there's nothing to stop them from just saying, oh, you don't want to vote for this? We're leaving the NCAA and we're just starting our own thing. And we'll see you later. And they're like, no, go. And you know what? And we're going to take all these other best ones that you have left.
We're going to weaken you by taking 5 from the ACC and another 4 from the Big 12. Now what do you have? We told you.
Yep. We're going to have the Power 50. Yep. And it's not an NCAA organization. They'll just, I don't even know if I favor that or not. I know that the NCAA's governance has become arcane, draconian. It misses the mark completely on the purpose for which it was created. It has become so overdone, so overcooked that it fails to serve the member institutions effectively. And that's why they're like, for the last 50 in court, is just because they have deviated so far from the charter of their origination that the courts don't even see them for what they were created to be anymore. So I do think like a fresh start could be good. I mean, we are so far gone on this thing. I don't know what that looks like. Now, I think the other, let's say it's the power, like you keep saying 40. I think it's a good number. So the power 40 schools say we're going off this way, and the rest of you figure your own thing out. I think that actually could be really good for that next, let's just say 40, the next 40 more. Because if those 40 want to spend out their nose, there's no guarantee that they're actually turning a profit, right? If they have a spend floor and a spend ceiling, you might be trying to keep up with the Joneses and missing the mark every year. And you're just, you get to a point where you're like, football costs us so much money. I don't know if we can keep going with football.
So you're talking about the biggest end.
Yep.
And then you could have schools like Northwestern, Vandy, Rutgers.
Right.
So like financially, we'd rather be in that next division.
Right. Where we don't have to spend $30 million a year on football NILs. Like when nobody's showing up, I mean, go to a Northwestern game, you just scan the crowd.
I cannot believe they're spending like $885 million to do a stadium that I still don't think people are going to go.
No, why would they? It doesn't So I think that there's I'm going to say the bottom, you might be right. Maybe it's only 5 schools, but it could be as high as 10 schools where if you're in the Super 40, it could be scary You might be turning a deficit on a yearly basis. Whereas if you're in that next 40 or expand it to 60, you can have your own playoff. You can have your own deal, and you can have some parameters that maybe make it look like what the heyday of college football looked like for a lot of people that are like my age and your guys' age, where we say this feels more like college sports and less like NFL D League, and we like it better. And they are actually producing results and profiting off of their athletics and growing their schools. I don't know. There's so many people who have mucked this all up all along the way that is it going to get to that point? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe they do a Super 40 and they keep the next 40 on and there's a relegation model. Cool. That's cool. The ones who are trying and succeeding get to move up.
I want relegation somewhere.
Me too.
In US sports. I don't care where it happens. I just want it somewhere.
That's where I really think that the Pac-12 and the ACC missed the mark when the Pac-12 was blowing up. Is they could have combined into a super conference with a conference champ. The top 12 compete in divisions for the conference championship. The next ones are in a league lower, and the bottom 2 relegate, and you move up.
Love it. I would love to see that happen.
Yep.
If there is some sort of split and break off, one of the things that I've been thinking about, because I've said that for I don't know how long, I'm sure this is going to happen at some point, but how would this all work, if at all, with the fact that there's a bunch of public institutions that are involved in that, and they do have government regulation and state regulation and all these other things and Title IX implications and all of that could play into it being public universities against private universities.
Oh, who knows? Like, I mean, I would lose all credibility if I told you I knew what was going to happen here, because I mean, we're going to talk about Wisconsin here in a second, and now we're seeing what the Big Ten is putting out there for these contracts and MOUs. And number one, is it legal? I don't know. Does it have approval as state institutions? These are state institutions in the Big Ten. So we have the state potentially breaking laws based on an assumption that a settlement is going to be approved in this House litigation in April. So you're already implementing the terms of the settlement that have not been finally approved. And when information like this MOU comes out there that shows you are trying to get around the structure that you've just agreed to already before it's even in place, you don't think that the court's going to get aware of that and look at those kinds of things before the final approval in April, and maybe it blows up the whole deal? Like, if I'm the judge, I'm like, wait a minute, you're already contracting around the settlement that we haven't even approved yet. Why am I going to approve this? So I don't know what's going to happen. And the fact that we have state institutions, and the fact that we have Title IX, and the fact that football is going along this line of like, we don't think when we do this House settlement that Title IX is going to apply.
Well, also Title IX is about to get overturned, I'm sure. Just by executive order.
It cannot be by executive order.
We'll see.
But yeah, neither can the 14th Amendment, right? But here we are. So you've got Title IX, and you've got the government saying, now maybe it'll say something different today than it said, 3 days ago. No. Title IX still applies to NIL and any compensation for any player in college. How does this all work? I mean, I don't know. That's why, like, I know that they just got these great ratings. I know we just got a 12-team playoff, and I know everybody's excited about it, but I can't help but think as I sit here now and I see all of these landmines that you just pointed out, that we're beginning the end of college football. We're not beginning the rise of it. Like, I really think this is all going to fall through, and we're going to have to start all over again.
Legal. That's why we got to lean on Justin Watkins. So we got 90 seconds on it's Xavier Lucas, Wisconsin player, into a 1 or a 2 year deal, is there for a year, decides, hey, you know what, I want to go to Miami. So now Wisconsin is, threatening him. It's What is it? Tortious interference?
Yeah. So they're saying Miami interfered with their contract that they entered into with the player, and they entered in a 2-year contract, and the contract, it's a memorandum of understanding, and it says, quote unquote, this is not pay for play, but you must play for us only for 2 years in order to receive our payment. So it's like, just because you say it's not something doesn't mean it's not something, right? It's like going back to the Pac-12 Mountain West. Just because you say this isn't a penalty clause doesn't mean it's not a penalty clause. You don't get to name it, right? It's a legal definition here. And so it absolutely is a pay for play contract. There's no two ways around it. If the kid doesn't play, he doesn't get paid. And he must be enrolled and he must get good grades. So he must be a student who plays in order to receive any compensation. The fact that Wisconsin and the Big Ten are willing to put this potentially in court by suing Miami seems like really, really bad decision making.
Last minute, you got a prediction as we look ahead to our 4:45 block? You got a prediction on how many players leave Ohio State in the next now 5 days? They have 6 days to do it. Everyone's not staying, and Ohio State's not going to let everyone stay.
20.
Ooh, okay, all right. I think it's lower.
You do?
Well, I'm being cautious. I said 8 to 10, but I could see that. I could see a lot saying, you know what, they get offers elsewhere, because that's what I would. If I was another school and I had big money, I'm poaching the hell out of that roster with the backups, especially.
Sure.
And then there's going to be a group of guys that Ohio State's going to tell, hey, you know, sorry, we got to upgrade at backup position. Get the hell out. That's the way of the world now. All right, another half hour on the way. Cofield and Companies. We have Justin Watkins here. Make sure you call Battleborn Injury Lawyers, not only in the Vegas area, but you can also call in Northern Nevada office in Reno, 775-766-1400, 766-1400. The call from anywhere in the state of Nevada number, Battleborn Injury Lawyers.
You're pregnant, and no matter what you do, no matter what you try, you can't stop using alcohol, drugs, or tobacco.